A consistent but almost never noted theme of American foreign policy is that it is always the Christians who suffer. When there's a war abroad that the United States is funding, it is Christians who tend to die disproportionately. There is virtually never a word about the Christians who live there, the ancient Christian community in Gaza, the West Bank, and Israel proper. So because no one has said a word, there has been great suffering among the Christian population in that region. In October, a Greek Orthodox church in the Gaza Strip was hit by an airstrike. We're showing the video now.
Tucker Carlson is getting a lot of backlash from his fellow conservatives after he decided to conduct an interview with a Palestinian Lutheran pastor by the name of Dr. Munther Isaac. You might be familiar with him. We actually did cover a few stories involving him. He's a pastor in Bethlehem, and during Christmas, he was the one who had Jesus surrounded by, like a little Jesus doll surrounded by rubble to basically draw attention to what Palestinians in Gaza are facing. He did that in lieu of a nativity scene, and so he has gotten some press attention in the past. But the fact that Tucker Carlson sat down with him and spoke to him about what Palestinian Christians are going through currently is what has led to a lot of the backlash. Now, the discussion engaged many on the right, or I should say enraged many on the right, including Representative Dan Crenshaw, and we're gonna get to his statements in just a moment. But before we do, why don't we take a look at some of the clips of the conversation that Tucker Carlson had with Isaac, and then we'll fill in the blanks, get to some details about the reality on the ground for Christians in Israel, in the West Bank, in Gaza. Let's get to it.
We continue to be horrified by what we hear from Congress, with, of course, some exceptions. There are some on the Democratic side. Of course, Rashida Tlaib comes from a Palestinian heritage. But when you look at the so-called religious right, we receive no sympathy whatsoever. Tucker, in this war, there was pastors who openly called, for example, to turn Gaza into a parking lot. It's not about one political party or the other. I remember even during the Trump administration, we pleaded as a Christian community. We pleaded that moving the embassy doesn't help. We pleaded that a peace treaty with other Arab countries, as much as I want to see peace, if you don't start with the Palestinians, it's not going to help. But again, it seems our perspective is never taken seriously. And look, now we're paying the results of years and years and years of American foreign policy. There is a very, very brutal war taking place in Gaza, a war that I've described using the word genocide, because it's a war that has used even starvation as a mean. And fellow Christians are suffering because of that war.
Pausing here to deliver some honest truth, as we do in our news coverage as well. TYT is facing challenges, guys, as the entire industry is. You know who could make the difference? You. If you hit the join button below, it's gonna make all the difference and keep us in business. We appreciate you, thank you.
Now look, obviously, when it comes to the suffering of Palestinians, the vast majority of them happen to be, of Muslim faith. That has gotten the majority of the attention. And the fact that Tucker Carlson is drawing attention to Christian Palestinians, I believe, is upsetting conservatives who are hardliners in supporting Israel, because it leads to a level of cognitive dissonance to some extent, right? I feel that Muslims, Palestinian Muslims specifically, have been demonized and dehumanized so effectively in the discourse here in the United States that it's kind of easy to justify what Israel is doing, because quite honestly, the way I hear people talk about Palestinians, it's almost as if their lives don't matter. They're not as important, right? It's worth taking out entire families if Israel suspects that there's a single Hamas militant hiding among them. And that, to me, again, really communicates to the world, okay, well, the lives of those innocent Palestinian civilians just don't matter enough, or don't matter as much. Would the IDF do the same thing if there was a family of Israeli civilians who were being held hostage by a single Hamas militant? Would they just bomb that house? I mean, I doubt it. But what this conversation drew attention to was the persecution of Palestinians who are not Muslim, the persecution of Palestinians who happen to be Christian. And as we know, in America, the conservative right has a soft spot for Christians. So I think that's part of what led to so much of the backlash that Tucker Carlson is getting for having this sit-down interview. Look, I'm not gonna sit here and say I agreed with everything in that interview, or I agree with everything this Lutheran pastor has said in the past. I haven't consumed or listened to everything he said in the past. But I do feel that given what I heard in this interview, the weird backlash that you're seeing from conservatives isn't really fueled by the content of the interview itself. It's more about the fact that Tucker Carlson is drawing attention to Palestinian Christians and the persecution that they have experienced. With that said, and as for Tucker's commentary, this clip from later in the interview is what has apparently attracted the most attention.
If you wake up in the morning and decide that your Christian faith requires you to support a foreign government blowing up churches and killing Christians, I think you've lost the thread.
And look, a broad thing that I kind of take issue with in regard to this exchange and the conversation surrounding this exchange is that it doesn't matter what the religion of the innocent people getting killed is. I don't care if they're Jewish, I don't care if they're Muslim, I don't care if they're Christian. The loss of innocent life or the devaluing of human lives is what disgusts me about this entire war, about this conflict. Okay, I found it absolutely reprehensible, disgusting, the atrocities that Hamas had carried out against Israeli civilians. I will never defend that. I will never make excuses for that, period. Same goes for the lives lost on the Palestinian side. The carelessness in which some of these airstrikes and the aerial bombardments have been. It's just, the devaluing of human life is what's been killing me day in and day out about this ongoing war. So whether they're Christian Palestinians, Muslim Palestinians, I don't care. And I think it's weird that for some people, the faith of the individuals who have been killed seems to be important. I don't find it important at all. What their religious beliefs are does not matter. What matters is, were these innocent civilians and were they unjustly killed? Now, what Tucker said there sounds like some pretty tough words, but Tucker never really showed any sympathy for Palestinians as a whole, right? So he limited his commentary to what Israel is doing to Christians specifically. I do take issue with that. And this next clip is a good example illustrating what I mean.
It'd be pretty easy for Republicans in the US Congress to say we support the government of Israel. But if you touch a single Christian, harm a single church, prevent any Christian from practicing his religion, you're done. Not a single dollar will come from the US Congress for you.
So look, let's get to the criticism, because I'm going way too long with this story, but it's important to understand like what the critics are saying. And so I mentioned Dan Crenshaw earlier, Republican congressman from Texas. He saw the conversation. I don't know if he saw the whole thing, but he was very triggered by it and put out a statement on X saying that this is who Tucker is, a click chaser. Tucker's MO is simple: defend America's enemies and attack America's allies. There isn't an objective bone left in that washed up news host's body. Mindless contrarianism is his guiding principle, buttressed by his childish tactic to just ask questions. I don't think that it is a childish tactic to ask questions. I think these types of conversations are important. I get that maybe these types of conversations yield information that might offend the sensitivities of conservatives who are hardline supporters of Israel. But the fact remains that Palestinian Christians are caught up in this war just as much as Palestinian Muslims. There's more. He says that Tucker wants you to believe he is the last place you can go for the truth, that he's the only one brave enough to reveal the elitist lies being told. This nonsense about Christian mistreatment in Israel is just the latest example. Well, I mean, there has been mistreatment. There's absolutely been mistreatment of Palestinian Christians. Are we gonna pretend like that doesn't exist? That's not a made up thing. It's not something that Tucker made up. It's not something that, the pastor he was speaking to made up. It's something that is well evidenced, well documented. Okay, so first, let's talk about Bethlehem, where this pastor is from. So 78% of Bethlehem's Christians said that they were leaving Bethlehem because of the Israeli occupation, while only 3.2% blamed the rise of Islamic movements. 12.5% attributed them leaving Bethlehem to both. And that's according to a poll that was done back in December of 2006. So one of the criticisms that you'll hear from conservatives against Tucker Carlson is that no. The Palestinian Christians ended up leaving Bethlehem. The population of Palestinian Christians in Bethlehem has decreased significantly, specifically because of the Islamic movements that have taken place, because of the PLO. They'll, of course, find a way to blame other Palestinians for it. In reality, after they were polled, after they left and they were polled about their reasons for leaving, they made it abundantly clear it was the Israeli occupation, but that'll get ignored, right? Dan Crenshaw also said Tucker will eventually fade into nothingness because his veneer of faux intellectualism is quickly falling apart and revealing who he truly is, a cowardly, know-nothing elitist who is full of, and then he uses a word I can't say, synonymous with crap. So notice that Dan Crenshaw didn't really offer any argument here. A lot of criticisms toward Tucker Carlson, a lot of attacks, a lot of name calling, but he didn't make a single case for why Tucker Carlson was wrong in interviewing this pastor. The Daily Wire's Andrew Klavan also weighed in saying, okay, so if Ben Shapiro, a patriotic American Jew, cares deeply about America's great Jewish ally, that's disloyal. But if Tucker Carlson spreads anti-Israeli distortions and lies in defense of terrorist murderers holding American hostages, that's patriotism. Got it. Well, I mean, I watched the interview. I didn't see any example of Tucker Carlson defending Hamas or justifying what Hamas did. But what Klavan did here is a common tactic, right? Where they put words in people's mouths to make them appear as though they're coming from an anti-Semitic place. Now, Tucker Carlson might be anti-Semitic, I have no idea. But what I do know about the specific conversation that's drawing the ire of some conservatives is that it drew attention to the persecution of Christians, something that conservatives are supposed to care about. They certainly care about it deeply when they claim that Christians are being persecuted here in the United States, even though there's no evidence of that. And so it is kind of fascinating to see them not want to draw any attention to that, not draw any attention to that reality. So I think that's really what's behind the anger that you're seeing among some conservatives. But with that said, I want to go to the very last video because, look, to the Israeli government's credit, when some of the extremists on their side have violently attacked Christians, they have spoken out against it. I wish they would do more to protect people. We don't see enough of the Israeli government protecting people. But I want to show you this video because it is in fact true that not just Palestinians, but also Christians in areas like the West Bank, in areas like Jerusalem, have been dealing with a lot of violent behavior coming from extremists on the Israeli side. Let's take a look.
In recent months, we've seen very serious phenomena towards the Christian denominations in the Holy Land. Our brothers and sisters, Christian citizens, feel attacked in their places of prayer, in their cemeteries and on the streets.
Christians in Jerusalem's Old City say they are often harassed, spit on, and even physically attacked by religious Jewish youth.
I view this phenomenon as extreme and unacceptable in any shape or form. This phenomenon needs to be uprooted.
Earlier incidents include the desecration of a Protestant cemetery on Mount Zion, an attack on international Christians during a day of prayer for Jerusalem, and harassment at a Messianic concert in Jerusalem.
So what you just saw there was the president of Israel speaking out against the harassment that Christians have been facing as a result of these extremist settlers. So I specifically chose that video to be as fair as I can, but it is also obvious and it's also well documented that Christians have been dealing with violent attacks. And yes, that is an important story, that is an incident, that is a situation that people are dealing with on the ground. But if you only care about innocent people who have the same religion as you, I don't know if that makes you a good person. I think that we should see value in all human lives, regardless of what their faith happens to be, whether they're Christian, Muslim, or Jewish. And so that's really my take on this story. We need to get our heads out of this tribal thinking and value humanity, value human lives. That's where I'm coming from.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.